one of the fascinating things we asked them, would you want a 5-minute break or a 60-second reset? They've chosen the 60-second reset because the 5-minute break, they're afraid they won't actually be self-disciplined enough to go through the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And the exercise is really helping them to release that compounded stress.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by DJ Casto, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief HR Officer of Synchrony. During the podcast, DJ says how Synchrony is prioritizing well-being at work, shifting from traditional work models to a more inclusive and humanized work culture that prioritizes well-being, growth, and fulfillment. He also talks about the change in power dynamics at work, within workplaces, and the importance of making every employee voice a priority. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. DJ, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
Nice to see you. I love the fact that you're standing up, super energized. You've clearly had your coffee already.
I did. I had my Americano. I'm ready to go.
Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about your, background and journey to where we are today.
Yeah. So, I've been an HR leader for almost 20 years. First half was at PepsiCo, great company to learn how to, what I say, do this work in a really purposeful way. And then joined GE at the time that they were IPO and then separating this business, which became Synchrony. I've had a really wonderful career experience to date with some great companies who truly know how to invest in people purposefully the right way. And as we were talking about on the front end, I'm a proud father of 3. I've got, but love it every day. Love being an HR leader and love being a husband and father.
I've never heard someone say dynamic, so you just, rather than say chaos, you said
we some days we're thriving, other days we're surviving. It's on the moment.
Tell everyone a little bit more about the company, in case they're not aware of it.
So Synchrony is in consumer finance, right? So it's the largest private label credit card issuer in the U.S. We help strategically our partners provide a variety of financing options to the consumer. And so we have partners like Amazon and Venmo and PayPal and Lowe's, Verizon. And so oftentimes, if you go in to acquire kind of a payment solution, either kind of a buy now, pay later, or a credit card offering for promo financing, we're the finance partner for them to provide those consumers kind of a variety of financing solutions. We've got about 20,000 employees globally. I think it's a special business that is really consumer focused on behalf of the partner to help finance, just about everything you could imagine. You need a couch, if you need some dental work that's outside your insurance, to just buying all those things we do and don't need, probably through our Amazon account. We're there to help.
I know one of the things from a cultural perspective you're focused on is creating a culture of well-being. Could you walk us through that, and then we can jump into some of the specifics of some of the actionable steps you've taken?
Yeah, this is probably an area that honestly I had to have some lived experiences to become a real champion around it. And I think we all, it feels like a blur for many of us as we had to navigate that unprecedented time of the pandemic. But I think what one of the positives that came out of that really tragic time was that we all got more in touch with who we are as human beings. As you figure out that there's things that are bigger than our jobs, than some of these things we worry about every single day. And for me, I started to do a lot of active listening with our employees. I started to do a lot of active listening at home to my family, to my friends, and this concept of total wellness, which before for me felt a little bit more like a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Hey, we believe in investing in your total self, your whole self, bring your whole self to work. But what does that really mean? And as we started to see employees be very vulnerable and us individually as leaders experience that, hey, we're all dealing with a lot. And there's this intersection point between physical wellness and mental wellness. And we've done so much work around ensuring that our employees and ourselves take care of our physical wellness. And we almost were dismissive a bit around the needs to invest and nurture our mental wellness. And if I'm gonna be honest with you, I grew up in a household that you didn't really talk about the mental wellness components. It was all physical wellness, drive strength. If you're strong, you'll be able to navigate all of it. And it was almost a wake-up call for me during that period of time that it's almost more ridiculous to dismiss it, to think about all the infrastructure and support we put around physical wellness, but yet we shouldn't be taking care of and being very thoughtful around how we're supporting our mind and how we can be the best human being to show up every day. And that your mind is this powerful component of who you are. And so we need to be thoughtfully investing in that the same way we have for decades invested in physical wellness.
What were some of the ways that you're now realizing that?
2/3 of our workforce are what I'd say is contact center associates. They are doing a ton of inbound calls from our consumers, trying to provide them solutions to make their customer experience better. We don't oftentimes get a lot of calls that just say, hey, everything's great. I actually just went to Lowe's. The checkout was seamless. I was able to get my promo for the refrigerator I was trying to finance. Hey, I just made my 1,000th transaction on my Amazon card. I just want you to tell you how much hit it. It's typically them calling with something that they're needing help with. And, for our agents or associates, that's back-to-back calls of stressful moments. And, as we were talking to them about, we felt really good about providing them an option to work from home. This was interesting. We were a 99% in-office culture prior to the pandemic. We were very traditional. We would debate for hours if a job could or could not work from home. And when we asked the question to our employees, would you want us to formalize a work from home solution or just come in, which we thought was radical at the time, come in 3 days a week? 86% of our workforce at that time said, we would love for you to formalize a work from home solution. Over 90% of our associates. Why do I give you that context? Is because they love it. They love being able to work from home, but it does make it more challenging and difficult. You don't have that colleague to your left or right to kind of take that break, have that human connection with.
Relate to, you're both going through the same thing, challenges, etc. Yeah.
Your leader can't walk by and be like, hey, are you good? As they, maybe had to go take a tough call. So they're very cautious with me because they don't want us to revert our philosophy here because they really appreciate the flexibility and choice. But we had to rethink radically, well, how do you support them? Because some of that stuff that happened organically as it relates to kind of wellness and support can't happen at home. In fact, you get more isolation and you get the pressures of home that are kind of merging with work. And so we looked for partners to help us with some of those solutions. And one of the great solutions that were presented to us through Great Places to Work was Thrive. That's been created by Ariana Huffington.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love that she's done is she's got science around this process of a 60-second reset. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. But
I'm very familiar. I know Ariana personally. She also spoke at our Wellbeing Summit, is a good friend of ours. So I definitely know a lot.
So then you know about the 60-second reset. She probably did that at a moment when you guys were together. And I was a bit skeptical to begin with. I was like, what can 60 seconds really do?
Break that down for everyone, what that means.
If you keep playing out the example I gave with our associates, so think about that. They're having back-to-back calls all day long. What we're working with Ariana's team on is to embed the 60-second reset in the workflow. And so if you had a long call, typically if the call is a certain length, it meant it was probably more complicated. There was probably more stress in that call. And what Ariana's team has helped us to recognize is that stress compounds over time. And so if our associates are taking back-to-back calls all day and they're building up that stress, then their ability to provide that customer experience that we would want without having a reset, it's a low likelihood that they're going to be at their peak performance halfway through the day versus when they started, when they've had to take on that compounded stress. And so what happens is with the Thrive reset is after a long call, we're able to route it and embed it in the call flow to allow them 60 seconds to reset. And what is a reset? It's a breathing exercise. They're customizable. So for some folks, you can, if what's important to you is seeing your family, like, you know, on the soccer field or at a picnic or after a Halloween party, you know, at the end of the day, that picture could come up. And then it's correlated with some breathing exercises, maybe encouraging you to stand up and then sit back down. All of these things that are, again, backed by science, that breathing exercise and that 60-second reset will allow you to release some of that compounded stress and allow you to complete your day a lot more effectively than you used to without a resource like that. And we scaled it in all of Florida. So we've got a 1,000-person contact center in Florida. We're working with them to make sure we fine tune when and how it gets embedded in the workflow. But the feedback from our associates has been tremendous. In fact, one of the fascinating things we asked them, would you want a 5-minute break or a 60-second reset? They've chosen the 60-second reset because the 5-minute break, they're afraid they won't actually be self-disciplined enough to go through the exercise. Mm-hmm. And the exercise is really helping them to release that compounded stress.
Yeah, I love that. What does it look like in their workflow? How's it embedded? Does it come up on their screen, on the app? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so there's two different ways. So InterDiem is a tool that we use that kind of routes training when people maybe need to be reskilled or upskilled in a certain area. If we start to see a pattern where some of the things that they're doing, they need to do a bit differently to be within our kind of standards. So we're using that same tool where right now we're using length of call. We'd love to start to use speech analytics and some other resources.
Sentiment analysis, and you can kind of hear what's being said and stuff like
that. As you think about the 2.0 of this, but right now, one of probably the easiest indicators is length of call. So after they have a long call, InterDiem routes to them so they don't get their next call. Instead, what gets routed to them is this 60-second reset that's in their workstation. And they actually go through the exercise. After they go through the exercise, they come back online to take their next call.
Yeah. What I love about that is a lot of sometimes with these, with Wellbeing or apps, etc., you have to go to them and search them out. Whereas this is really helping the employee in the flow of work, in the moment that matters. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense.
Yeah, as opposed to, okay, let me have a look in our intranet, what resources or app do we have? You're serving it when they need it in the flow of work, really having a huge impact on on the employee experience and obviously, of course, their well-being.
100%. And listen, that's why you got to find great partners. And I want to give Thrive a lot of credit. Typically, to your point, people sell you things and it's like, well, this is the way it is. You can use it or not. But we've started to embed this principle around co-designing with our employees. Some of our best benefit offerings that we've provided have not been fully, the thought has been completed, but the actual implementation of it isn't fully baked yet.
Yeah.
And so we actually launch it through that agile methodology of kind of a minimal viable product and say, hey, help us kind of co-design on what's the most important thing for you. And that's what we're doing with Thrive, with our associates. Before we scale it across the board, where are the friction points? What worked well? What didn't work well? Is there a threshold? We think it's 10 minutes. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Let's go talk to our associates. If we did a 5-minute intervention point where we give you, that 60 seconds, do we feel like that is better or worse? And so a lot of this testing and learning is helping us to get it right. Because this isn't about a check the box, right? I'm not going to feel better now that I've offered a new wellness benefit. I'm going to feel better when I hear from the voice of my employees that, hey, that really made a difference. But would you consider doing X versus Y? And that co-designing principle has helped us a ton to get to a better end state or a better product. Designs things to allow the employee to be their best, and for us to drive peak performance, right? Because there's that full circle kind of component to this on why I'm investing in it. It's a part of my values, but it's also going to help us drive peak performance for the company.
Yeah, it's also good for business.
Yeah.
As well. Have you also like integrated it into the flow of work of like into things like Teams or Slack and stuff like that? So it shows up when.
So it's fully embedded into Teams, which is a really nice benefit for if you think about my people leaders that aren't having kind of their day scheduled for them. So I'm using it personally. What I like about it is two things. One, you can schedule your 60-second resets in your Outlook calendar. So I can look at my schedule and I can say, man, I am jammed today. And those are going to be some pretty intense meetings or meetings that are going to take a lot of energy. I'm going to add to my calendar through Thrive into Outlook a 60-second reset. So because, we all try to prioritize these things, but then your day takes over. And it's like, man, I should have done that at 12 o'clock. And so by scheduling it, it happens. The other thing that it does by having it embedded within Teams is it will prompt a series of questions. How are you feeling today? And you think as a leader, it's like, well, I don't have time for that. But if you just click on it, and then again, it takes maybe 30 seconds, it starts to ask you a series of questions and then prompts an exercise, right? Hey, you might want to take a moment, right? Based off of how you answered those questions. So what I like about it is it's kind of like an a la carte menu of offerings, right? You can do it through Teams. You can decide when you want it on your Outlook calendar. It will prompt you. Now you have to decide if you're going to answer the question or not, or we can embed it in your workflow. And I think we've got to have those customizable options because our workforce is not monolithic. There's a lot of diversity in the roles and how that day works for that leader. And I've got to have solutions that meet the diversity of those roles.
Talking of diversity, I know you've created a diverse set of well-being coaches, if I remember you saying. Talk us through that.
So this is a great example of co-designing with our employees. So at a time where I feel like, it's just constant that there is a lot going on in the world, right? And what is going on in the world is directly impacting our workforce. And so we always had resources like EAP. And I think there's a place for that. But it is a very, it feels a very corporate driven benefit. You have to call kind of this 1-800 number. You don't know the individual on the other side of the phone. Do I really want to be that vulnerable and start to unpack what's going on in my life? And I don't know anything about those individuals. Now, to meet the needs of our workforce, it's a benefit that we need to have out there. And a lot of our employees use it and they're fine with it. But one of the things we heard, particularly from our diverse workforce, is, DJ, I'd love to have a wellness coach that I can identify with.
Yeah.
And so like my Black Experiences Network came to us and said, could we have a wellness coach to help lead some of our wellness conversations that also has had lived Black experiences? Mm-hmm. Same thing with my female network or women's network, as we call it, our advancing Hispanic talent initiatives. And so we've tried to look at the diversity of our workforce and create a roster of coaches that actually match the diversity of our workforce. I love that.
Yeah.
And they're dedicated to us, because the other thing is people want to build trust, to be able to go there on these topics. People want to know who they are, what they're about, their background, their experiences. And so we publish their photos, their bios.
Amazing.
Employees can just set up one-on-one meetings with them through Outlook, or they can invite them to team meetings, or they could be invited to diversity network meetings. And they've really become a part of kind of our culture and DNA. If we have an event that's happening, we typically, the first step is let's go to our wellness coaches, the roster of wellness coaches, who's the right person at this moment that could speak to our workforce the best. And they normally co-lead discussions with us and help us to navigate all the things that continue to come to us within the workforce. So it's been a really powerful addition to the company. And I don't even want to call it a benefit. They've just been a great addition. They're like a team that we lean on and our leaders lean on to help better support our workforce.
Yeah. How did you, so are these people that work full time, or are they part of a provider that you work with? Like, how does that work? Or is it part, and if people that already work there, that's taking this on as additional work? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, we were deliberate. I want to ensure these individuals are trained professionals, because what could happen is, and they are not designed to take on kind of a full-time engagement with an employee. I think of them as almost like a broker, where we might have 10 conversations together, and then we'll decide, you know what, here's what you really need. You really need to leverage one of our financial wellness coaches, because we've had 8 conversations about your finances, and I'm here to listen to you, but we've got to start to put together an action plan so that we can move to action to help support you the right way. If it's a true mental wellness issue, they might need someone who's a dedicated therapist and trained therapist.
There's someone you can start a conversation with, though, that you can relate to, that you can see yourself in. That's
100%. And what you're trying to do is build trust and confidence in the ecosystem that, you know what, if I do have this concern, I'll go to them. We deliberately designed it where they're not our employees, so that there is a bit of a wall where it is an agency that we use.
Oh, it's an agency.
They're
Okay.
100% dedicated to us.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the ability for there to be a bit of a separation, so that our employees can leverage them. They can broker the resources and feel comfortable on doing that. But it's not a direct member of my team.
I think that's important, right? Because they might not want to go. They're like, oh, what if they tell, am I going to be seen as less than, or I'll be overlooked for a promotion because I'm having these challenges? They want to feel like they're going to someone separate, impartial, right? From the business.
I always try to, I would hope that people wouldn't feel.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, of course.
Disclosed, but I also get human feeling and nature and caution as you navigate really sensitive topics. And it might not even be a correlation to career or success, but it just might be, I don't want to share those things.
Yes.
I don't want people to know all of those things about me.
Yeah.
But I do need help. And that's their story. That's their personal things that they have to navigate. And back to, what are we trying to solve for? I'm not trying to solve where I feel better that I've stood up a team. What I want to feel better on is that my employees are using these resources to help them be their best. And at the end of the day, if I design it in a vacuum and don't think thoughtfully around some of the things you and I just talked about, Chris, then I won't get the usage that I'm looking for. And the usage is, again, not a metric. The usage is an indicator that my employees need this. And so how do I provide more opportunities for them to engage with a resource that could really help them?
Yeah. And also you want to really focus on being proactive rather than reactive, right? Because a lot of times, a lot of these solutions is not addressing, it's like putting a Band-Aid on the problem. You're not really addressing the real issue as well. So that's super important.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes you need a variety of our solutions collectively together to really meet your need. Mm-hmm. But where do you start? And I feel like oftentimes employees struggle with just starting somewhere.
That's the biggest part. It's the stigma attached is quite overwhelming. Even for me, when I first saw someone, because I was suffering from anxiety and was super embarrassed, like the thought of physically going and traveling to see someone in person, to talk about my anxiety was really overwhelming. And I was like, oh, I don't know. But then I end up having a Zoom call with a therapist. And that was it wasn't Zoom, it was a video call with a company. And I was like, oh, this feels a lot less invasive.
Yeah,
And it's not someone in the company, it's someone impartial. They're not going to
yeah,
judge me. And I was like, oh, this is a great experience to do that. So the easier you can make it, and the fact that you are then talking to someone that looks like you, has the same lived experiences, you're going to feel so much more comfortable having that conversation. What about, because you mentioned obviously you're a dad of, a father of 3 kids now. How has that made you reflect on the work you do and what you offer around sort of parental leave and stuff like that? Because there's one thing hearing about it before you're a parent, you think you understand, and then you become a parent and then you realize, oh wow, okay. It's very different.
it's probably one of the most powerful, to your point, lived experiences
Yeah.
that changed who I am, both personally and professionally, for the better. Right? I think it gave me perspective, a level of humility around what it takes to be able to navigate both worlds. And I think for a certain chapter of my life with my wife, our primary focus was us, making sure that we had a strong relationship, and then our careers. And although that takes work, you then add a layer of being personally responsible for a human being that you've created. It's probably one of the most powerful moments that if you're that you're blessed to have. And so for me, the first probably eye-opening moment was watching my wife navigate it, which is where I became really passionate around the leave we're offering and how we offer that leave. And because it was really important for her, as she was contemplating whether to continue her professional career or think about dedicating this chapter to just being not just being, but being one of the most important roles, a mother. The lead that her company designed provided this optionality. And what I mean by that is it's not just the length of time, but it's how you take that time.
Mm.
And a lot of this has to be between the family unit at home, right? And so what I witnessed with her was the amount of time they provided, which candidly was more than what we were providing at the time, which was a wake up call, one. And then two, the ability to take it intermittently. And so you could take a portion of it, but then save a portion of it to leverage for moments that matter. Those moments of matter might be first doctor's appointments or first days of going to a class together to share that experience between kind of child and parent. And so I came back initially and said, we've got to rethink this and redesign it. So I did some active listening, which I'd done before, but when you do active listening with a shared experience,
Yeah.
you're better at asking the questions that really matter. One of the things we changed was it was a horrific experience for our birthing mothers to have to go out on short-term disability, which, by the way, when you say that out loud,
It sounds crazy. Yeah. It's so bad. It sounds horrific. Yeah.
On a short-term disability to bring life into the world.
Yeah.
Let's just take that for a moment. And it was a clunky experience that added stress on top of an already really stressful time. And so we said, get rid of that. And this is the really neat thing about being in the role that I'm in with a terrific leader of Total Rewards is we have the remit to change those things. And sometimes it's just like, well, that's the way it is. Nope, doesn't have to be. Let's really think about how do we make that employee experience at a time when their life is profoundly changing, make it better. So we came back, we got it, we took it out of short-term disability, we made it a more seamless process for the birthing parent to go through. We extended the weeks. We now offer up to 22 weeks of parental leave. And then the other reflection moment I had was how am I showing up? How am I helping Leah to navigate this moment, and how do I get to participate in this moment and not feel guilty for doing so? I will tell you, I got better. It took 3 children to get it right. This is the session where we're allowed to be a little honest with each other, right? So I didn't take as much time for Liliana, my first, but I did take a lot of dedicated time for parental leave with Nico, who was my third, because I learned a lot through each one of those moments. And I also understood the perspective as those are things you never get back. And if my company believes in me and they trust in me, when I show up after being present at that moment that really mattered for my family, I'm actually going to be a better leader post that versus the guilt that I'm feeling that I didn't show up and take dedicated time. But I didn't do it for a long period of time at the birth of Nico. I actually took it in the summer where I could share it with all 3 of my children and my wife. She took that leave at the same time. So we actually had a really beautiful time together where we took our family to Italy and celebrated my son's baptism at the town in which my grandparents were originally from before they immigrated to the United States. And so it was one of these experiences that my wife and I talked about and tried to figure out when was the moment that we feel like we were gonna do something collectively together, the family, that we would always remember, and also allow me to be more present with my family. So that intermittent component of when you take it, I think, is just as powerful as how much time you give those individuals.
Yeah. Firstly, I love that. And as you said, those are the moments that you will never forget. And you will also never forget that that was the organization that supported you.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where people really go above and beyond without being asked to do so, because they really, value the time that they had and the company that supported them when in the times that are life-changing, to your point. One thing I'd add to that is also the importance of supporting parents when they return
Yes.
to the workplace, which is my wife didn't have the greatest of experience. I remember she was so overwhelmed and stressed, and like as the days went by, the countdown towards the day, and there was zero communication or support from the organization beforehand, and she had no idea what she was walking back into. It was a new team, it was a new manager, all of those things, right? She's still breastfeeding at the time, she's still managing, Robin with nursery, and there was zero communication. And I was like, this is crazy. That like you should be excited. She should be, really looking forward to it, right? She was originally, and then as the time went by toward returning, she became more and more stressed. And I was like, what a moment that the company's missed. What a missed opportunity to really, help her along the way. How are you looking at that?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, you bring up an excellent point. This is where all companies could lean in a bit more to think about. It's not even just day one, although day one is very stressful.
No, it's not just day one. You're right.
Particularly if you have to make a choice to put your child in daycare and you've been able to be there. Like these are really stressful moments in a parent's life. And so I think the one thing we are doing right now, we're doing some work on return ships.
Mm-hmm.
And through return ships, and this isn't just coming back from parental leave, but if you've taken a moment to actually, carve out some dedicated time with your family, how do we encourage more return ships? So we have a return ship program that we've started. And through that return ship program, we're actually learning a lot. And we're learning a lot about all of the stress points or friction points that typically exist and are still a disproportionate burden for typically the birthing mother than the father, as you think about the dualities of roles. And I'm not that every household is different, and every household divvies up those responsibilities different. But I would say in my household, even though I try to show up, there are a lot of moments that my children want their mother, and their mother has a bit more complexity in kind of navigating. And so I think we need to recognize that it could be the father versus the mother, or two partners that are that are deciding to do this collectively together. So I don't want to profile one for the other, but typically in the household, one individual
Sure.
is
Yep.
experiencing a bit more. I think about my contact centers where I have, over 70% are female, many are single mothers. And I think about that stress when you think about the complexity of not actually having someone to help you navigate it the right way. So one thing we did there is childcare and emergency childcare. This is probably one of the biggest stress points. You think you have it all planned.
Yeah, I know it. Trust me.
Dreaded call, right? You've had it. You get the dreaded call, which is like your childcare solution has fallen through.
Yeah, my daughter's nursery closed down, and there was nothing in the area. Every nursery was fully booked. It was a nightmare. So yeah, I know. Yeah.
So here's what we did, because we experienced that too. You know what we did? We just said, again, this is where if you're agile and you trust your workforce and you don't get so caught up in legacy processes, we just said, you know what? We will give you up to $100 a day. You can find whoever can take care of your child. It can be a neighbor. It could be a mother. It could be a friend. We will reimburse you up to that $100 a day. It does not have to be, a certified child care facility. We had made all this engineering that had really limited the amount of folks that people could tap into. And listen, I grew up with a working mother. You know who took care of me? My grandmother and my two great aunts, right? That kind of helped do that. If they could on a whim be able to flex for my mom, why couldn't I give them that $100 reimbursement just like I would give a corporate entity?
And it's crazy because you say it out loud, right? And when you spoke to your benefits manager, it was probably like, oh, just because the way we do it. Like, there's no real reason why you're doing it that way. It's just because that's how we do it. So I love that. It's sometimes it's we're putting all these barriers and stress points in place for no reason whatsoever.
Well, as HR teams, I will tell you, and I have an amazing total rewards team that has really embraced this methodology. But we talk about agile methodology in the business to drive better product innovation. Our benefits are products.
Yeah, right. It's true. Yeah,
we should be using that same design thinking and that same agile mindset. But that was radical for my teams. Would you talk about a standardized offering? Hey, we do this once a year through open enrollment. No, we do this quarterly in rethinking our benefits, providing the needs. Now, your core medical benefits, I can't change insurance that frequently, but the support benefits that I provide, why can't I be more agile? Why can't I be more innovative? Why can't I think we're too conservative on this. Why can't I test a benefit? Because people come to, well, you'll never be able to go to the workforce and take it away. Yeah, I could. You know why? I just would be honest. We thought it was going to do X. It's not. It's doing Y. We did some listening sessions. I'm going to pivot those resources to offer this versus that. I'm not saying I wouldn't have some people that won't be pleased on that change, but we're looking to help the majority of our workforce.
And people understand that, right? Like, you're just talking to them like normal human beings and saying, hey, we actually decided it didn't work. And the fact that you communicate, where companies go wrong is that they do those things you're describing, but they don't give the feedback of the why. I think so they'll take it away, or they'll add something, or they'll do a survey and they'll get 90% of people replying and don't even follow up with the feedback. Okay, we hear you. We tried this, but we decided to do that. Okay, great. Thank you for letting me know. At least appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Before I let you go, you're obviously still on this journey, right? It never ends. What advice would you give to our listeners as they think about mental health and well-being? And then also, where can they connect with you if they want to reach out to you personally and say hi?
Yeah. So what I would say is, I think what we're striving here is for continual innovation, constant active listening, giving ourselves grace when something goes wrong. Because I think sometimes we're too cautious and too conservative, particularly when you're thinking about benefit offerings or how you're supporting things. And I think if you, back to your point, Chris, are just honest with your workforce that we're going to test and learn a lot of things, and then we're going to invest to do those things at scale that help the majority of the workforce. And our benefits are designed as an a la carte menu. So there are certain things that this year you might lean into a bit more intentionally. And the next year you might not need them, but your colleague might. And so at the end of the day, we're just trying to be better at providing the best solutions possible to help the diversity of our workforce. And if you stay anchored to that, I think you're going to come up with really interesting solutions that help your employees be their best to drive peak performance. And then I would say the easiest way to connect with me is just LinkedIn. I'm on there. It's an easy way to kind of connect. If we've got anything we can do to help someone else who's thinking through some of this, and if you've got great ideas that could help me. Now, I'm not looking to open the floodgates to every vendor that's out there. Thought partners who can help me think about applying the work. But I'm open to the discussion.
Amazing. And I'm sure there's not that many DJ Casto on LinkedIn, so they can pretty find.
It's just me and that musical superstar that we talked about that you can Google randomly.
Yeah. Well, and anyone listening, as always, all those links will be below to connect with DJ. I'll also put a link in there to some of the resources that you mentioned and companies as well. But honestly, thanks so much for coming on the show. I love what you're doing, genuinely. And I wish you all the best until we next speak. Thanks so much.